Hi, everybody. Today I've got another sentencing for you. This trial I did cover, and you're not going to need tissues for this one. I promise you. Welcome back. I'm Rebecca, the host of Crafting and Crime Daily, the show where I recap live trials so you have something to listen to while you're crafting. But it's Thanksgiving week, so no trials, but we have sentencings. And like I said, you don't need issues for this one. This is not one where you feel very sorry for this woman, Susan Lorincz. I did cover this trial. If you want to go back and watch listen to my coverage of this trial, I'll link the Crafting and Crime podcast playlist up here. Just go there and I'll show you a copy of what the thumbnail looks like. I have them all color coded, so you can listen to that. But on June 2nd of 2023, Susan Lorincz shot and killed Ajika Owens, 45 years old, with 4 children. Their names were Titus, Africa, Israel, and Isaac, ages 3, 7, 9, and 12. Very sad case. But here's basically what happens. There's a dispute between between the kids and Ajika and Susan Lorincz. Susan lives in an apartment building, and there's another apartment building across the lawn. Now there's this, which leaves enough space, this lawn, that the kids like to play there. And the guy that was in that other building, he would come out and he would play with the kids and he would organize them, and they would have their little games and whatever. And they did that on June 2nd. And during this time, she claimed that part of that lawn was hers. It wasn't hers. She was renting the property, but she did go to the landlord and had previously complained, and the landlord put up a no trespassing sign for her, on the edge of where her property starts. She had had a prior incident with Ajika based on stuff that Ajika's children would run home and tell her, oh, she's being mean to us, she's calling us names, and she threw a roller skate at us, and because they're leaving their toys everywhere, and this is annoying the heck out of Susan Lorincz. They're being loud and obnoxious, and they realize, there's no question in my mind, that they're getting on this woman's nerves, and it's probably fun. Hey, we know how to push this woman's buttons. Let's do it. So that day, June 2nd, they were pushing her buttons. They finished their little organized play. The neighbor goes home. Susan's like, peeking through the curtains like Gladys from Bewitched and filming them. And then she, at one point after the organized play was over, 3 of the boys came over to her patio, and they're annoying her, and she yells at them, "Get off my lawn." That's that lady, "Get off my lawn." So she says, okay. They leave, they go home, and they tell mom, whatever. I don't know what they told mom, but here comes Ajika. Boom, boom, boom. And she starts banging on the door. But right before she was banging on the door, Susan had used the bathroom. She hears this banging on the door, and she runs to see what it is, and she realizes it's Ajika. And she's like, come outside. She wasn't trying to get in. She wanted Susan to come outside and talk to her. So Susan calls 911 and says, someone's trying to break into my house. They said, we're on our way. And she goes in the bedroom. Well, first she goes and washes her hands because she forgot to after she used the bathroom. Then she goes in the bedroom, gets a gun, and she comes back and she fires the gun through the door and kills Ajika Owens. She walked a few feet away and then collapsed and dies in front of the kids. Oh my God. This woman didn't wait for the cops to get there. It only took them 4 minutes to get there. 4 minutes. And as the judge, you'll hear, points out, she could have gone back in her room and closed the door, and she would have had 2 doors between her. She didn't think that, because I don't know if I told you, the door had been previously broken by Ajika. The landlord repaired it. He said, it's fine now. It works fine. Nobody's going to get in. You deadbolted. You're fine. She could have put that door between her bedroom door between her, and waited for the cops. She didn't. She fired the gun, killed Ajika Owens. The jury found her guilty of manslaughter with the use of a firearm. She is facing 30 years in prison. She's 60 years old with resting bitch face. Just going to say. Anyway, just my opinion. So the first thing that happens during the sentencing is the victim impact statement. So Ajika's mom, who used to be a stewardess or was a stewardess at the time that this occurred, she gets up and she talks for an hour and 10 minutes. An hour and 10 minutes. And I'm going to tell you right now, I didn't listen to the whole thing. Even on fast forward, she kept repeating herself and talking about how she had to give up her life. She could no longer be a stewardess. She had to resign. Now she's trouble finding employment. She doesn't have the social life that she used to have. She doesn't have the same friends. Now she's got to be a mom to these 4 kids. And she goes on to talk about the trauma that the kids have experienced and things like that. And I mean, it's sad. And she didn't want her face shown, so I'm not going to show you any of that testimony because it was lengthy, it was sad, and, understandable. So then the defense puts on some lay witnesses, some friends of Susan Lorincz. She had some friends. Mm-hmm. Crystal and Crystal's husband, who had been friends with, Crystal had been friends with Susan for 12 years, since 2012. Yeah, 12 years. And her husband had been friends with her for 8 years. And Susan had helped her out tremendously, had mentored her daughter. They shared their Christian faith together. Apparently, Susan was a devout Christian and regularly attended church, was very active in the church community. Crystal described her as kind, generous, consistent. I don't know what that meant, but and then the defense attorney asked her, was she a good chef? Like, what difference does that make? That has no bearing on anything. Oh, yes. Oh, my God, she could cook. Okay. And then her husband takes a stand, says the same thing. She's kind, outgoing, generous. Did you think she was a good chef? Oh, she's a good chef. So she can be the chef in the prison. Anyway. Both of them said that this event was very out of character for this woman. Okay. Then her sister gets up and takes a stand. And her sister said that she suffered from depression, or her mom, their mother, they had the same parents, mom and dad. Mother suffered from depression. Dad was a drunk and gambled away all the money. So mom had to work extra hard to take care of them. And both she and her sister had been sexually abused since they were very, very young. This woman testified since she was 4 years old. The sister, 4 years old. And she's younger than Susan. And he had been abusing Susan since before she was born, until she was 20 years old, she was able to leave Susan. So from the time she was a young child till 20, she was sexually assaulted repeatedly by her father, according to his sister. And according to her, we're going to hear from a psychologist later on. Her grandfather had hung himself. Apparently, he was born in Transylvania, and he somehow lost his limbs, lost both of his legs in some kind of accident, was very depressed, and then hung himself. So her father was suffered from drunk and, like I said, drunk, and he was a gambler. Her brother also drunk and violent, and had assaulted her, not Susan, the sister. So not a great way to grow up, these girls, not at all. And the mother, when Susan told her mom about it at the age of 14, her mom didn't believe her. So there was a person that took a stand that was a pastor, Shannon Harris, nice lady, not church lady, nice church lady, with the what do they call those, shift dress? I didn't even know they made those anymore, but a floral shift dress. So she described her as kind, loving, and a very calm presence. She would sing opera in the church. She had previously been a singer in New York, and she'd sing opera in the church. Susan did, which was a little surprising for me to hear that. She says, she doesn't let people in easily. And then the pastor said, she puts up these walls. So apparently during Susan's life, she had worked as an EMT paramedic in her 20s when she left her father. She had been in the insurance industry, so she would often help people in the church choose their insurances. You know how at the end of every year, the elderly have to choose their plans, and she would help them. She had been a chef, and her and her sister had opened multiple restaurants together. Okay. Then the fifth witness was a psychologist, forensic psychologist, because the defense, similar to yesterday's sentencing, was moving the court or asking the court to depart downward from the 30-year sentence, which was the minimum mandatory for manslaughter with a firearm. Yesterday they had a score sheet. When in these capital kind of cases, they don't use score sheets because she had no prior criminal record, which he took note of. The judge did. So this forensic psychologist said she specializes in trauma, and she diagnosed after spending about 11 hours with Susan over 5 different visits. Probably not all in person. This psychologist was from Miami, and this takes place in, I forget where we were for this one, in Florida. I don't remember. Sorry, it's Florida. Yeah, all these cases in Florida. Anyway, so she talked about how that PTSD can be a lifelong disorder. So she said that, sometimes with PTSD, fears are not rational. For her to have said she was in fear that this Ajika was going to come through that door, not rational to me, because we know the door's been repaired and that she could have gone in the bedroom and put 2 barriers between them. But she's got this disorder, this mental disorder, and she doesn't trust people. She might perceive aggression when there is no aggression with the kids, with Ajika, based on her diagnosis. Even though, and it's not rational to us, but this is PTSD. So she said she was psychologically stable, although she does require specialized treatment, including medication. But she found this diagnosis had been made maybe as early as 1984, but she couldn't find the paperwork for that or records to support that. But at least by 2018, she did find medical records that said she had PTSD. But at that point in time, Susan goes for treatment. She gets the meds, and the psychologist said, you need to write a letter to your father. She wasn't ready for that, and she couldn't afford the treatment, so she didn't get it. So she's never really gone through any treatment for her PTSD. Yeah. So she talked about how, the grandfather's from Transylvania and lost his legs and committed suicide. Her father, growing up, not in this country, obviously, had been put into a concentration camp where he was sexually assaulted. And that her father, not just sexual assault, but psychologically assaulted both of his girls, calling them fat and ugly. And yeah, apparently he would do that to a lot of people. He did it to some person that they knew, calling her fat and ugly, whatever. She would kill herself based on what he had said to her. Yeah. In the past, she even sexually assaulted by her landlord. Shh, quiet. Sorry. And at some point in her life, her best friend was kidnapped and murdered. So in addition to that trauma, she has had many, many surgeries. She and her sister grew up overweight because their dad didn't like people that were overweight, so they gained weight. Maybe they would be left alone by dad. So she had many gastric surgeries that, went wrong and had to be repaired. And then spinal surgeries, knee surgeries, car accidents. She fell off a horse, you name it. This woman has been through the ringer. Lots and lots of trauma. The psychologist did not believe that Susan was exaggerating any of this. She was able to corroborate all of this through records, through her interview with her sister. Yeah. So after all this is said and done, the judge, Susan spoke. I forgot. Susan spoke. Best part. She gets up and she speaks, and I do want to play that for you. It's not lengthy. So here is Susan speaking about the events of June 2nd.
All that trauma she experienced were things that were completely out of her control.
Correct. So yes, she didn't choose to be.
Good afternoon. I'm making a statement so you understand my actions and my reasoning the night of the shooting. My medical disabilities. I've had 25 knee surgeries on my right knee. Ended up having multiple replacements and then a catastrophic failure due to an allergy. I went back to have another knee replacement and I was burned during surgery. And so I had gotten very ill and my knee literally goes backwards. I had a laminectomy of my lumbar spine from the accident in 2019. I was back-ended in the stoplight, and there was a horrible complication. My dura from my spinal cord actually healed onto my actual spine. So when they went to do the correction, give it a little more space, the dura tore. I was leaving cerebral spinal fluid, and he had to do an actual spinal cord repair. They didn't know if I would walk again from that. I've also had left with nerve damage to my lower legs and feet and have diminished feeling and numbness. And I've fallen twice because of this. And I had I fell the first time in 2019 and had sustained internal injuries. I had bruised my lung. I had gotten a ganglion cyst on my right wrist. The second fall was November 2022. I fell because I walked into a bathroom. The light was supposed to come on and it never came on. And there was a toilet paper roll with the actual cylinder inside. And so it rolled out from under my foot and I fell backwards. And I had torn my rotator cuff and muscles in my left shoulder. The 2019 accident also impacted my cervical spine and I lost feeling in my hands and had to have therapy. I had horrible migraines, terrible neck pain, and I was going through all this. And so I also have cataracts in both eyes, and the one on my left is progressing faster. So it looks like I'm going through Vaseline on a lens. and I have some heart issues and high blood pressure. And there's a reason why I'm telling you all this. I have carpal tunnel in both hands and muscle loss and diminished gripping capabilities. The first time I encountered Miss Owens was February of 2022. I was about 7 weeks after the neck fusion, and she basically attacked me. And she threw the sign at me, and I thought, what is going on here? I didn't expect to be confronted like that. And I had a huge red scar on my neck at that point in time, and she's screaming at me, and she keeps coming closer and closer and closer. I'm backing up, and then she's trying to rip the cell phone out of my hands. Finally, I had to, say, you're trespassing, you really need to leave. And she picks up the sign, and she says, what, this fucking trespassing sign, and throws it at me. This is where she hit me. I still have the red where she hit me. I've never ever dealt with someone who was that violent that quickly. And so I was terrified of this woman, literally terrified. I've never had anyone, the first time I've met them, throw something at me and get so physically abusive. And people are saying I wasn't afraid. I wasn't afraid. I was horrified. And when she was banging on that door, it was just so loud in the house. I could not hear what she was screaming. And then I found out the children, who said they were right there, actually were around the corner of the apartment, over 100 feet away. How could they hear anything? So I don't understand. And the prosecutors knew the children lied. They found the children in the lies. They said I threw skates and I hit them. That didn't happen. The prosecutor knows that didn't happen. That's why the charges were dropped. I've just been flummoxed about this whole case. I don't understand. I understand I have PTSD. This woman kept coming after me. I had approached her because I was watering my plants, and she's going, "Oh, there's a crazy old white lady," and I'm like, "You can't just go around saying someone's crazy." I mean, it was insanity. So I went to say something to her, and she verbally attacked me again. She's like, you've been calling my kids racist names and stuff. I said, no, ma'am, I have not. And she kept getting angrier and angrier. The more I said no, the angrier she got. So finally I said, I was terrified. I mean, she went from a very relaxed position here. I could see her neck veins starting to bulge. Her pulse is really getting, fast. And I'm thinking, she's going to beat the hell out of me right here in the street. So I said, listen, I'm sorry. If that's what you think I said, I'm very sorry. I don't mean to offend anybody. I didn't say it, but I'm sorry. I went to walk away, and she's following 1 foot behind me the whole time to my apartment till I slammed the door in her face. Again, never had anyone do anything that aberrant in my life. Like I said, it's been a nightmare. Then Detective Spitz says that Isaac had come, was one of the 3 children. I told him no. He still put it in the report that this child was there. The child was never there. I have never spoken in my life to Isaac. Just haven't. I knew him by his association with his mother. Never spoke to the other little girl, and never spoke to the little boy Titus. Israel, I did speak to. He has been unbelievably rude, and it was a few days before Christmas 2022, and he was trespassing, and I'm like, you need to leave, you're trespassing. And so he turns to me, he says, you're old, you're white, you're all alone, nobody cares about you, you're worthless. And I'm like, oh my God, I didn't expect this from a 9-year-old child. And so I finally said, you know what, we come into this world alone, we leave this world alone, get used to being alone. And he left. And the next thing I know, she comes back, and she's screaming, banging on my door. I'm like, what in the world is going on? You can't talk to my child that way. I said, ma'am, you need to leave. And so she was banging and banging. She breaks the door frame. She broke it so much that she bent the actual strike plate. And I couldn't lock the door, and I couldn't open the door correctly. I was like, if she's going to do that to my door frame and break a metal piece, what is she going to do to me? I also have from that same fall when I was on the toilet paper, I have an aneurysm. on my left kidney artery. I'm not supposed to be getting excited. I'm not supposed to have high blood pressure. This woman is terrorizing me. I mean, she is absolutely terrorizing me. If she hits me, she will kill me. Literally, she will kill me. I will bleed out internally. I will exsanguinate. So was I terrified? Absolutely. And just as far as the kids saying I said racial slurs to them, it never happened. I just never said them. I have never talked to London. I have never talked to Calix, Jareth, or his name. But Isaac was the other one. I have never spoken to him. Isaac, I knew. The other three, I would never have known they even lived in my neighborhood. As far as the child Israel is concerned, he said I called him a slave. I have never called anyone a slave in my life. Not an adult, not a child, just something I wouldn't do. And to say that I called him the N-word is ridiculous. I've never called anyone the N-word. And I don't know where he's getting this from. I don't understand. I was married to a non-white man. He was actually Middle Eastern, brown skin, and someone had called him a sand nigger and a camel jockey. And I was highly offended. And I would never do that to a child, ever. And I sang professionally in New York. I did jazz and the blues. I sang for Charles Gamble, Ernie Susser, and I had voice coach Jim Gassett, who had people in Dreamgirls, Miss Saigon, Les Mis. And I sang with Larry Woodard from the Metropolitan Opera. Larry is black. Charles is black. Our pianist was black. Most of the girls who sang the blues and did jazz, all black. I never had a problem with a black person in my life. This is not about race. And I actually love children. I have taught horseback riding lessons, dressage and hunter equitation. I've taught swimming at summer camp. I was a big sister for Big Brothers Big Sisters. And if it wasn't for having cancer, I had uterine and ovarian cancer in my 30s, I would have had my children. And it's one of the reasons why I had issues with the gentleman I was with, because he wanted to have another child, and I felt I was stopping him. That said, I would like to make a statement to AJ's mom, children, and friends. It is with heavy heart and great remorse I write this letter to you. First and foremost, I am so sorry that I took AJ's life. I never intended to kill her. The night I shot that gun, I was confused as to why she was screaming and pounding on my door. I had an idea that Israel told her I had hit him. I could not understand why she was so angry. And she truly scared me. Now that I know he told her I hit him, I am just profoundly sad. Not only did a mother die, but a daughter and a sister. I think of your family's loss and know how hard it is to lose someone you love. How being able to see that person, or just talk to that person is such an empty feeling. I so wish I could go back and change things so that she was still here. I would trade my life so that she could be here, if it were possible. I know that you have all suffered from her loss, and I have prayed for you and your family during this time so that you can, that God could help you. Nothing I can do will change the outcome. I can only tell you I have cried and I feel horrible for my actions. Please accept my humble and sincere apology for this tragedy.
Okay. Clearly not taking much responsibility for her actions. I mean, she did, but she didn't really. The thing that caught my eye about this statement that she gave was she's using all these big words. I was flummoxed by why I'm here. Like these huge words. Yeah. But doesn't seem very remorseful to me. Anyway. So the judge, after all these people get up and speak, he did acknowledge the psychologist, but he said he just wasn't even going to acknowledge the other people because he finds that if he takes into account testimony of friends and downwards and does a downward departure, what about those people that don't have any friends? That's not fair. What? So he just sentences everybody the same, whether your friends testify that you were a great person or not, or a good chef. He's just going to give you a sentence. But he did give weight to and acknowledge that she was suffering from PTSD. So here is his ruling. Now, but watch her reaction. Watch her reaction. I told you yesterday I can read lips. She said at one point, this is bullshit. Just like our podcast, this is bullshit. Yeah. Mumbles it out of the side of her mouth. This is bullshit. She was not happy. You could tell she was not happy with this judge. And she will appeal. And
I do find that the defense has produced evidence that she would qualify for departure because she has for a mental disorder. I think I find they've proven she has PTSD, which is a recognized mental disorder, and is unrelated to substance abuse or addiction, and that she is amenable to treatment. So I do find she would qualify for that departure. On your second one, the capacity of the defendant to appreciate the criminal nature of the conduct, I don't find there was sufficient evidence to prove that departure. There was no indication she ever did not understand what she was doing, or that shooting at a person would be against the law, or that she couldn't conform with the law in any way. As a matter of fact, she seemed to be, prior to the shooting, calling the police. So it didn't appear to be any situation where her capacity was impaired in any way. I don't find there's evidence that the victim was the initiator, willing participant, aggressor, or provoker of the incident. Otherwise, although she was knocking loudly in this case, there was no real attempt to get in the residence. She kept asking her to come outside. So I don't find that that departure ground has been met. Despite the existence of one legitimate departure reason, even if she did qualify for the other two departure reasons, I would not depart in this case, because I find that the aggravated nature of this case and this offense and the harm inflicted outweighs the mitigation or the departure when I weigh the totality of the whole case. So I find that the seriousness of the offense outweighs any legal departures that could be applied in this case. I'm primarily looking at the harm inflicted upon not only the victim, who of course lost her life, but her family. She has 4 children, all of whom were present during the offense or somewhere in the general vicinity, or at least home. It certainly will have a traumatic impact on their lives for the rest of their lives. They'll live their whole lives without their mother, which I think is a very significant harm inflicted upon them by Ms. Lorincz. When I look at the nature of the offense, I find that the shooting was completely unnecessary in this case. Ms. Lorincz was behind the door was locked. She had already called law enforcement. They were en route. She knew they were en route. She was in a relatively safe position. For some reason, she went into her room and found a gun. She could have stayed in the room and put another locked door between her and Miss Owens, but she came back out, put herself in front of the door. And at the time she fired the gun through the door, she was safe. Miss Owens was simply, although she was clearly banging loudly and was probably very angry over the whole situation, appears to be she was mostly demanding that Miss Lorincz come outside, which would indicate she had no indication of coming inside the house. So when Miss Lorincz fired the gun through the door, she did so knowing a person was directly on the other side of the door. And she knew that person wasn't a burglar, she wasn't a robber, she wasn't a rapist. She knew she was probably upset about the interaction with the kids, but she had arguments with her before, and no real harm came other than, I guess, a sign was thrown at her, a paper sign. And that's when she decided to shoot. I find that the shooting, when I listened to every aspect of the trial in every aspect of the sentencing here, it's the facts don't rise to a murder charge, but they are very aggravated manslaughter. Because this case, the shooting was based, I find, more on anger than fear. I think that's pretty well established in this case. So when I weigh it out, and believe me, I find that she's a victim of child sex abuse was a significant mitigating factor, and she has no criminal record, which is also a significant factor. However, we also have a tremendous harm inflicted upon this family and the victim's family. So what I'm going to do in this case is she being adjudicated guilty of manslaughter with a firearm, or serve 25 years in the Department of Corrections. Credit 538 days, $100 cost of prosecution, $100 fine, court cost. Good luck to you, ma'am. You have 30 days to appeal. This is the defense requesting the appointment of public defender for purposes of appeal.
Yes, sir. Just a few more things I want to put on the record. There was never.
So that's it. Susan's going away for 25 years. So he did downward depart 25 years, but she's 60 years old. This is a life sentence. Also, I want to put on the record that she got less time than the 19-year-old from yesterday. If you want to see that video, I'll link it up here. Interesting. She got less time for murder. Well, it wasn't murder, for manslaughter with a firearm than the kid who attempted to murder 3 people. Let's just ponder that for a second. Anyway, that's it for today. I don't know if there'll be another sentencing today, something else I can cover for you tomorrow. If not, have a great Thanksgiving. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Take care, everybody. Bye.